tyrant ordered the confiscation of all weapons in the world and assigned Meng Jiazi, the greatest swordsmith alive, to forge an unparalleled blade named Ham Guang. Fearing the sword would be stolen, Meng Jiazi secretly crafted a second one, naming it Shadow Bearer. To strengthen it, he infused his son Meng Yang's blood into the forging process, transforming it into a legendary treasure. However, before the sword could be completed, disaster struck. Meng Jiazi was assassinated by a treacherous minister. Only his son Meng Yang survived, escaping with the unfinished sword. With only that blade left, would Meng Yang avenge his father's death? Let's follow the next events of the story. When assassins arrived at his home, Meng Jiazi realized danger was near. To protect his son, he handed Meng Yang the unfinished Shadow Bearer sword, telling him that once it was completed, he must avenge his father. Then he pushed his son into the river, hiding him, before turning to face the assassins. Before Meng Yang's eyes, his father was killed, receiving the fatal blow. Too young to fight back, he could only cry in silence. Time passed. Meng Yang grew up haunted by the memory, his desire for revenge burning within. 12 years later, the boy had become a tall young man, still living a vagrant life with the homeless, hungry, and wandering. He always carried the Shadow Bearer, the only thing his father left behind. Meng Yang now worked for a boss named Jin, taking on dangerous jobs for survival. One day, Jin assigned Meng Yang and his comrades to assassinate the legendary swordsman of Zhongshan. But upon confronting him, they quickly realized they were no match. With a mere flick of the wrist, the Zhongshan swordsman could have killed them all. Yet, when he saw Shadow Bearer in Meng Yang's hands, the swordsman stopped and spared their lives. Before leaving, he gave Meng Yang a jade pendant, saying it could be used to claim a reward, as if they'd slain him. The street children cared for by Meng Yang and his brothers were starving, awaiting the money. Xiao Yue, the youngest girl in the group and Meng Yang's little sister, gave up her small portion of food to the younger kids, believing that Meng Yang's return would bring plenty. When Meng Yang and the others reached the gates of Redwall City, they found them closed. The prince, son of the emperor, ruled there, banished by his father. Under the prince's order, the guards had shut the gates to stop starving people from flooding in. But the prince, merciful in nature, eventually ordered the gates opened. Thanks to that, Meng Yang and his group entered. He handed the jade pendant to Xiao Yue, asking her to exchange it with Boss Jin for the reward. However, Boss Jin was a shrewd man. Even after verifying the pendant's authenticity, he claimed he wanted the swordsman's head, not a pendant. He mockingly added that someone had seen the swordsman alive that morning, proving the pendant was worthless. Not only did they receive no money, but Xiao Yue and the others were beaten and thrown out by Boss Jin. Meanwhile, Meng Yang sought a blacksmith to finish the Shadow Bearer. But the blacksmith refused, saying the sword was made from a rare pure metal, one of a kind. Because it was so unique, no one could finish it. He advised Meng Yang to sell or reforge it into tools or weapons for cash. Disheartened, Meng Yang left. That sword wasn't just a relic, it was the hope of his vengeance. To Meng Yang, Shadow Bearer was his will, his heart, his reason to live. Returning home, Meng Yang heard that his siblings had not only failed to get the money, but were also badly beaten. With no money, they could only survive on water. Seeing his exhausted, hungry brothers and sisters, Meng Yang felt he had failed as a leader. Left with no choice, he decided to sell Shadow Bearer. As the deal was about to be made, Xiao Yue suddenly appeared and firmly opposed the sale. She refused to let him part with the sword. As they argued, the others ran in with great news. Boss Jin had found them a new job, escorting a young noble back to the capital. The reward was 2,000 silver taels, half paid up front. Shocked by such a fortune, the group could hardly believe their ears. It was a life-changing opportunity. Starvation had left them no other hope. Though the road to the capital was full of danger, bandits, rebels, and killers, they accepted the job, betting their lives on a brighter future. With the advance payment, they hit the streets, feasting and shopping to make up for long days of hunger. While others celebrated like wealthy merchants, Xiao Yue grew uneasy. Why hire them? With so many martial experts around, why pick beggars like them? But Meng Yang and the rest were too excited to care. The next day, they began their mission, escorting the young noble to the capital. That evening, they stopped to rest at an inn. When the innkeeper addressed Lord Du as Your Highness, the group was stunned to realize that the person they were escorting was actually the Crown Prince, son of the tyrant king despised by the realm. Mont Yang was very surprised, but contrary to what they had expected, the Crown Prince appeared friendly. He spoke with everyone like a friend and even invited the whole group to dine at the same table. At first, Mont Yang didn't believe the Crown Prince was sincere, but when he heard him say that everyone traveling with him, regardless of background, were his comrades, equals bound by loyalty, his heart wavered. The Crown Prince even asked to see Mont Yang's sword. Though he agreed, Mont Yang remained wary and distant, for in his heart, the son of a tyrant king could hardly be a good man. That night, Mont Yang met privately with Little Moon to discuss their next steps. He said they should leave immediately, as they had already received part of the payment, and he didn't want to protect someone like the Crown Prince. While Little Moon was still hesitant, they suddenly heard the sound of a zither playing in the dead of night, a strange melody that made Mont Yang uneasy. At the same time, the Crown Prince also sensed something wrong and rushed downstairs. Just then, a group of assassins stormed in. Their target was the Crown Prince's life. Mont Yang and his comrades charged into battle, scattering the enemy. To their surprise, the Crown Prince wasn't only skilled in literature, but also a master of martial arts. His sword flashed like lightning, cutting down several assassins with only a few basic moves. Thinking the danger had passed, the group relaxed. But just then, the most dangerous figure appeared. White Rainbow, the infamous assassin of the realm, emerged from the shadows. White Rainbow's swordsmanship truly lived up to its reputation. His every move was swift and ghost-like, making it impossible to predict his next strike. After several exchanges, White Rainbow suddenly ordered his subordinates to retreat. They withdrew, but not before setting fire to the inn. After the assassins fled, the Crown Prince let out a sigh of relief. However, aware of the growing danger, he decided not to keep Mont Yang and his companions by his side. The Crown Prince said it was the best way to ensure their safety. After bidding them farewell, he departed alone, leaving Mont Yang and his team behind. Mont Yang had originally planned to abandon the Crown Prince, but after spending a night traveling together, he realized the man was nothing like what he had imagined. The Crown Prince did not resemble the tyrant the people gossiped about, but instead was a thoughtful and profound individual. After careful consideration, Mont Yang persuaded Little Moon to take the others back to the city. Though reluctant to leave him, she eventually agreed. After their farewell, Mont Yang immediately set off in pursuit of the Crown Prince. Surprised to see him return, the Crown Prince gave a slight smile. He said, "It's always better to have a companion." The two continued on their journey. After traveling a while, they came across a scene of slaughter caused by rebel soldiers. The Crown Prince decided not to take the main road, choosing instead a series of remote trails. Though still filled with rebel forces, he believed they were less dangerous than those actively pursuing him. Along the way, Mont Yang secretly hung his jade pendant on a large tree to mark the path. Soon after, they stopped at a roadside inn run by a father and daughter. As they were about to eat, the innkeeper suddenly burst in, panicked, and warned that rebel troops were approaching. He quickly hid the Crown Prince and Mont Yang in a woodshed and went out to confront the soldiers. Failing to find anyone, the rebels captured the innkeeper, leaving his crying child behind. Mont Yang, unable to bear it, prepared to rush out to save him, but the Crown Prince stopped him. Mont Yang turned and angrily said, "You are the Crown Prince, yet you turn a blind eye when your people are being captured. You're a coward. You don't deserve to be emperor." The Crown Prince remained calm and replied, "Mont Yang, those rebels and the innkeeper are all my people. Without chaos and poverty, they wouldn't have turned out this way. What matters now is not to fight recklessly, but to build a prosperous society where no one needs to become a victim of hardship. If I act now, not only will I fail to save him, but I'll also attract more rebels." His words stunned Mont Yang. He realized how shallow his thinking had been. Though filled with anger and frustration, he chose to follow the Crown Prince and continued their journey. That night, they found shelter in a stone cave. In the silence of night, the Crown Prince told Mont Yang his story. Though born a prince, he couldn't stand his father's cruelty. He had spoken out and was subsequently exiled. Now, with the king gravely ill and ready to pass on the throne, opposing factions had plotted his assassination, unwilling to let the crown prince carry out his reformist ideals. Hearing this, Montaigne looked at the crown prince with new eyes. Behind that calm demeanor was a determined man, willing to face danger to change the dynasty. That night, the assassin White Rainbow appeared again, tracking the jade pendant Montaigne had left on the tree. He blocked Montaigne's path and demanded the crown prince's location. But Montaigne, loyal to the end, would rather die than say a word. Just as they were about to fight, noise erupted in the distance. White Rainbow told his men that the approaching rebels were not worth their effort and ordered a retreat. Looking closely, Montaigne realized those so-called rebels were none other than Little Moon and his comrades. Duong was deeply moved but also worried for everyone's safety. However, Moon firmly replied, "Brother, we've lost everything. But if the crown prince succeeds, he'll be the last hope to end this chaos." Touched by everyone's sincerity, Duong couldn't refuse. He agreed to let them stay and help protect the crown prince. Soon after, Hong discovered Duong's group's hiding place. He immediately led a team of assassins to pursue them, determined to kill the crown prince at all costs. In the critical moment, Duong and Moon escorted the crown prince forward, while Duong's 3 friends chose to stay behind to block the enemy. These were once timid men who feared death, but now had found great courage to protect the nation's fate. Against the assassins' overwhelming power, they still clung to Hong's legs, trying to buy time. Ultimately, the 3 sacrificed their lives on the spot. Up ahead, Duong, Moon, and the crown prince rushed into the darkness. Unfortunately, the treacherous mountain paths and pitch-black night caused all 3 to fall into a deep cave. When Duong awoke, he felt immense heartache. He realized his close brothers had died protecting the crown prince, and guilt overwhelmed him. Moon tried to comfort Duong, but the pain in his heart was too great. He couldn't forgive himself. While they were still recovering, a group of people captured them. These were rebels hiding in the mountains. They were taken to meet their leader, Commander Tran, a tough but shrewd man. At first, Commander Tran didn't recognize the crown prince, thinking him just a merchant with 2 followers. With no evidence proving they were spies or soldiers, he spared their lives, but kept them under close watch. During captivity, Duong drowned in grief and self-blame. The deaths of his 3 friends haunted him. Moon, though full of compassion, couldn't ease Duong's guilt. The crown prince, though silent, showed deep sorrow and gratitude for those who had died for him. Later, Commander Tran invited the crown prince for a talk, realizing this man wasn't an ordinary merchant. Seeing the crown prince's exceptional qualities, he invited him to stay and help the locals. But the crown prince had a greater mission, to protect the realm and avenge the innocent. He declined Tran's offer and resolved to continue his journey. Meanwhile, Duong still hadn't overcome the loss of his friends. Seeing his despair, the crown prince encouraged him. He understood Duong's thirst for vengeance, but also saw flaws in his swordsmanship. The crown prince advised that if Duong couldn't believe in his sword, how could he achieve something as great as avenging his father? Duong had always seen his sword as worthless, just an ordinary blade. If it weren't his father's relic, he would have sold it long ago. But the crown prince's sincere guidance helped Duong regain his composure. He realized he had to trust himself and his sword, his only tool to fulfill his vow of vengeance. As they prepared to leave the cave, Commander Tran discovered their plan to escape. Noticing their strange behavior, he quickly deduced that the supposed merchant was actually the crown prince. Commander Tran, who hated the tyrant king and wanted justice for his slain people, decided to execute the crown prince. He ordered him tied up and prepared to burn him alive. The crown prince, though frightened, quickly regained composure. He accepted death in exchange for justice for his father's victims. But Duong couldn't let him die in vain. He stepped forward, voicing his anger, saying it was because of the crown prince that his friends had died unjustly. He wanted revenge on their behalf. Hearing this, Commander Tran handed Duong a torch and allowed him to burn the crown prince. Duong approached with the torch, expressing his deep gratitude and respect. His friends, once cowardly and afraid of death, had changed after meeting the crown prince. He said the crown prince was compassionate and generous, unlike his father. He was the only one who could lead them out of this dark and chaotic life. Duong's words made everyone reflect, but Commander Tran still doubted the crown prince's goodness. At that moment, Tran's wife and child appeared. They testified that Duong had saved them from starvation in the city, and the crown prince had opened the gates to save the suffering people. Their words moved Commander Tran. He began to trust Duong's words and spared the crown prince's life. More than that, he showed them the quickest route to the capital. But before they left, he warned that if the crown prince failed to become a wise king, he would seek revenge. The crown prince replied with determination, "If I ascend the throne, I will restore peace for all people like you. No one will have to hide in caves again." After this emotional farewell, the three boarded a boat and smoothly headed toward the capital. The crown prince, upon sensing the sword Meng Duong was holding, suddenly remarked that perhaps this sword could counter the Ham Quan sword. However, as Meng Duong's father once said, until vengeance was fulfilled, he still hadn't fully understood the meaning behind those words. Meanwhile, in the capital, the assassin Bach Hong, who had been sent by Trio Ham to assassinate the crown prince, returned to report. Bach Hong returned the Ham Quan sword to Trio Ham and reported that the mission was impossible to complete. Trio Ham, unwilling to let someone who knew too much about his schemes live, decided to use the Ham Quan sword to kill Bach Hong. However, Bach Hong reacted swiftly, almost killing Trio Ham on the spot. Bach Hong's actions terrified Trio Ham, who realized he had underestimated this opponent. Bach Hong then approached the riverbank and saw the crown prince's boat heading toward the capital. He muttered that the crown prince was a man for whom many were willing to sacrifice their lives to protect. That proved the crown prince was the true son of heaven. Bach Hong wished the crown prince safety. The next day, as the trio neared the capital, they encountered two riders on horseback. Meng Duong and Tiong Wet immediately suspected they were assassins. However, the crown prince stopped them and affirmed that these were his people. Before joy could settle in, the two riders were suddenly struck by arrows and fell before their eyes. Meng Duong and Tiong Wet panicked, realizing that assassins were ambushing them from all around. The crown prince recognized them as Trio Ham's men, not only pursuing them near the capital, but personally appearing to recapture the crown prince. Meng Duong rushed to stop them, but with just one strike, Trio Ham easily shattered the shadow sword, the treasured sword left by Meng Duong's father, while Meng Duong was nearly killed by Trio Ham's soldiers. In a life-or-death moment, Tiong Wet bravely charged forward, blocking the soldiers, but was severely injured by Trio Ham. In the end, as Meng Duong and Tiong Wet were forced to flee, Trio Ham and his men did not pursue. Their goal was only to recapture the crown prince. After escaping, Meng Duong and Tiong Wet found a temporary hiding spot. However, Tiong Wet succumbed to her injuries. The heartbreaking scene made Meng Duong feel like everything had collapsed. His closest friends had sacrificed their lives. He was left with nothing but a broken sword. Seeing no more value in it, Meng Duong, in despair, threw the sword down a cliff and wandered off with no clear direction. He returned to the mountain cave of Tran Tu Lin, hoping to see his old friends again. But when he arrived, he found only devastation. The place had been massacred and everyone was dead. While he stood in shock, Bach Hong appeared. He revealed that Trio Ham's men were behind the tragedy. Bach Hong also knew that Meng Duong was the son of Meng Gyatu, the famed swordsmith. He revealed that the shadow sword Meng Duong carried was an exceptional weapon, but Meng Duong had to discover its true value himself. Hearing these words, Meng Duong decided to return to the place where he had discarded the sword. After a period of searching, he finally found the sword lodged in a rock. He drew it out and resolved to continue his journey, even though he didn't know where it would lead. Meanwhile, in the capital, Trio Ham brought the crown prince before the king, not for a peaceful father-son reunion. The king was on his deathbed, but Trio Ham staged a cruel drama, framing the crown prince as one who sought to usurp the throne and murder the king. He even stabbed himself to forge false evidence that the crown prince was the murderer who wanted him dead. Meng Duong, having retrieved the shadow sword, returned to his former home, now in ruins. He went to the place where his father had been killed by Trio Ham and jumped into the cold water to cleanse his sorrow. In that moment, he heard his father's voice reminding him of the shadow sword. His father said that only when Mang Duang's blood merged with the sword would it awaken and unleash its true power. His father's teachings reignited a fire within Mang Duang. He was no longer weak, but became a strong warrior, training tirelessly to prepare for revenge. At the same time, the crown prince was led to the execution ground by Trio Ham, prepared for execution. Just as Trio Ham thought he was about to achieve his goal, Mang Duang appeared to stop him. Trio Ham mocked him, believing Mang Duang was a mere amateur, no match for him. He even arrogantly revealed that he was the one who killed Mang Duang's father. However, Mang Duang was not frightened by Trio Ham's threats. He called upon those who once hated Trio Ham and were willing to die for vengeance. A fierce and brutal battle broke out. With sword in hand, Mang Duang moved like a storm, slaying traitors and corrupt officials. Eventually, Mang Duang stormed into the main hall where Trio Ham and his elite guards waited. Trio Ham believed his skilled warriors would easily defeat Mang Duang, but every soldier who charged forward was swiftly struck down, even though Mang Duang wielded only a broken sword. The crown prince also witnessed his efforts, but Mang Duang was still outnumbered. He was eventually injured by a soldier and kicked forcefully into the water. Trio Ham rejoiced, mocking the death of Mang Duang's father. He said that Mang Duang would soon reunite with his father in the afterlife. That comment triggered Mang Duang. His eyes filled with hatred, striking fear into Trio Ham. Mang Duang's blood fell into the water, unintentionally activating the sword's power. The shadow sword was reborn. The soldiers all charged in at once. With newfound power, Mang Duang was no longer afraid. They were no longer a match for him. In just a flash, the entire group of soldiers was defeated by him. Now only the cunning Zhao Han remained. Seeing this, Zhao Han charged forward to fight him. But the director only let him perform a few basic moves before Meng Yang delivered a fatal thrust. The traitor was eliminated, and the throne returned to its rightful owner. However, the crown prince, though wishing to thank Meng Yang, had no time to do so. Meng Yang had vanished. In the end, Meng Yang's journey was not just a tale of revenge, but also one of self-discovery. After all the pain and loss, he realized that true strength did not lie solely in the sword, but in perseverance, determination, and the will to overcome adversity. The sacrifice of friends, the leadership of the crown prince, and the loyalty of Meng Yang all contributed to a surprising yet meaningful conclusion. How did you feel about this film? Leave a comment to let me know. If you enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to support more videos coming your way. Thank you so much, and see you again.